Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take that massive stack of source material, all your articles, your research, your notes, and we try to distill it down to pure, potent, and hopefully immediately applicable insight.
Today, we are not just analyzing politics or history. We are plunging really headfirst into a world where politics is history, where magic is this visceral, bloody mess, and that line between good and evil is, well, it's basically been erased by the ultimate weapon, necessity.
Well, our source material today is the utterly dark, sometimes hilarious, and just fundamentally brutal opening chapters of Joe Abercrombie's The Devils.
And the tone. I mean, the tone is set by the author's own dedication right at the front.
Oh, yeah.
It's his dragging fantasy fiction into the sewer since 2006. And that really tells you everything you need to know right there.
It does. This is a story that's morbid, it's hard-boiled, and it's intensely focused on blood and guts.
So the mission for our deep dive today is to unpack one simultaneous, absolutely catastrophic shift in reality. We're going to be tracking two protagonists, a petty, ambitious monk and a desperate, cynical street thief, as they are yanked instantly out of their own small-scale struggles.
And thrust onto this grand, secret stage, a papal mission.
Exactly. To install an empress on the distant serpent throne of Troy or, face immediate annihilation.
Okay, let's just unpack that, because this isn't a slow build to heroism at all. This is an immediate, violent collision between the small, self-serving life you've built for yourself and these world-saving, or maybe more accurately, world-ending responsibilities.
Right, so we really need to establish that cynical baseline for both our characters before the floor just completely drops out from under them.
Let's start with the city, the setting.
We begin in the so-called Holy City. It's St. Elfric's Day, and the first impression you get is one of just overwhelming, chaotic, and profoundly hypocritical sensory overload.
Yeah, if you're picturing these golden, quiet streets filled with, solemn piety, you could not be more wrong.
Not at all. It's the ultimate anti-pilgrimage.
The sources describe this almost paralyzing density of people, a massive traffic jam of pilgrims, relic buyers, tricksters, and schemers. It's a riot of humanity.
And the key detail, I think, comes from Brother Diaz himself. He's one of our main characters. And he notes that the prostitutes outnumbered the priests some 20-1.
That one detail tells you everything, doesn't it? It tells you the true nature of this sacred capital. It's a commercial hub. It's a marketplace for sin and salvation alike.
It's transactional faith, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the sensory experience it's truly overwhelming. Diaz is stuck in his carriage, it's barely moving, and he's just trapped in this cacophony of shouting, wailing, and fighting.
And the smell.
Oh, the air is foul. It's a mix of wood smoke and cheap incense, the scent of manufactured piety, and then that's mixed with the overwhelming stench of a nearby fish market. It's holiness mixed with rotting flesh.
Which is a perfect metaphor for the church itself in this world.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it sets the stage for the religious irony immediately.
Yeah.
You have these crippled, wailing flagellants publicly whipping themselves, hoping for a cure from the hoisted relics of St. Ælfric. It's this desperate, sincere search for faith.
But then, right above them, swaying perilously over the crowd, are two ragged priests from competing beggar orders, and they're arguing viciously over the exact meaning of the Savior's exhortation to civility.
Squalor mixed with high-stakes theological pettiness.
And that pettiness is really the foundation of our first protagonist, Brother Diaz. I mean, his entire life up to this point has been defined by small-scale, cynical scheming, not some grand piety.
Not at all. His primary worry, while he's trapped in this epic parade of suffering and commerce, isn't spiritual enlightenment, it's punctuality.
He's just panicking about missing his audience with the Pope, an appointment he earned entirely through, internal maneuvering. The source says all that work undermining his brothers at the monastery.
And my favorite part? Preventing the abbot's mistresses from discovering each other.
Right, that's the scope of his ambition, successfully navigating small-scale infidelity politics. That's his great achievement.
And the moment where he prays for salvation is key here. He's stuck in the gridlock, and his highest spiritual appeal is to, and I quote, "O blessed Saint Beatrix, holy martyr and guardian of our Savior's sandal."
And what does he ask for?
He asks her to get me to my shitting audience with the Pope on time. It perfectly illustrates that his relationship with the divine is purely utilitarian. It's centered entirely on advancing his own career. He is the ideal cog for this church's corrupt machine.
But the world outside his carriage is infinitely more dangerous. And that's where we pivot to Alex. She embodies the holy city's gutter survival skills. Her life is defined by debt, quick reflexes and this pure, hard-boiled cynicism.
Absolutely. If Diaz operates in that administrative gray area, Alex lives in the criminal black market.
She doesn't see herself as inherently bad, though, just
Yeah.
pragmatic.
Right. She defines theft not as a moral failing, but as just good reflexes. It's a necessary vocation in this city, but she is struggling. Desperately. We see it in her frantic attempt to pass off a bag of dog feet as the finger bones of St. Lucius.
A failed scam to raise cash, she is at the absolute bottom.
And the bottom, as you said, has teeth. She has immediate and lethal debts, primarily to a man named Papa Collini, who has sent Bostro and his thugs to collect.
And that alleyway encounter is so quick, so brutal, and just utterly devoid of any romantic tropes of a charming rogue thief.
Oh, completely. Bostro immediately calls her a lying weasel and a fairdy-fuck. And the violence is just visceral. The narrator explicitly steps back to say, there really is nothing romantic about a punch in the gut from someone twice your size.
That line just grounds the stakes in this horrifying reality right before they elevate so dramatically.
And then, the terror of the choice. Bostro produces a pair of iron pincers, polished from obvious use, and he gives her this binary, brutal option: teeth or fingers.
She is literally moments away from being physically disabled or permanently disfigured simply because she couldn't pay a small debt. Her life, in that moment, is worth a handful of coins.
Which is the perfect narrative inflection point. Because right at that precise, terrifying moment of near execution, we get this massive theatrical interruption.
The unlikely rescue.
By Duke Michael of Nicaea. He strides in with his gold-threaded robes, demanding that Bostro unhand her royal person.
The contrast is just staggering. One moment, Alex is gutter trash. The next, she is an object of intense political theater.
And the declaration he makes is just unbelievable. He names her Her Highness the Princess Alexia Pyrogenetos, long-lost daughter of the Empress Irene, and rightful heir to the serpent throne of Troy.
And Bostro's reaction is just priceless. He squints at Alex as if someone had told him the turd he'd just watched squeezed from a goat's arse was actually a gold nugget.
The gap between the claim and the reality of this dirty, desperate thief is just enormous.
And this is where the source material gives us the concrete proof points. Duke Michael doesn't rely on trust. He relies on physical, ceremonial evidence.
First, there's the birthmark beneath her ear.
And second, and far more critical, the matching half coins. This key ceremonial token from Troy. The ragged edges of Alex's half-disc just perfectly align with his, sealing her new and very lethal identity.
The Duke's negotiation after that is just a beautiful piece of dark pragmatism. He tosses a small handful of coins to Bostro to cover her debt.
And Bostro, still skeptical, asks if that's really what a princess's life is worth.
And the Duke clarifies the value immediately. He gestures to his massive battle-stained sword and says, "That's what your lives are worth."
The message could not be clearer. The cost of the debt is cheap. The cost of touching this new political asset is death.
The thugs wisely flee, and Alex is suddenly elevated from owing a few coins and losing her teeth to being a piece of international political capital worth killing and dying for.
And she didn't even have to change her clothes.
It's the ultimate bait and switch. She survives the physical threat of the pincers, only to be immediately thrust into a political situation where failure means war, assassination, or an even slower, more painful death.
Okay, let's pivot back to Brother Diaz. In true form, he has navigated the chaos of the Holy City, and he's arrived early, which of course means he's still late.
Exactly. The local reality is that in the Holy City, every day is at least one saint's day, and everyone is always late. The system accommodates its own corruption and inefficiency, so all appointments are shifted. His petty success and punctuality is immediately rendered moot.
But the reality check is far greater than just timing. He isn't ushered into the presence of the Pope for that cushy benefice he was craving.
No, instead he meets Cardinal Ziska, the formidable head of the earthly curia. And this immediately signals that Diaz is now dealing with matters that are far from irrelevant. Ziska only concerns herself with the noteworthy.
And what Ziska details is a comprehensive apocalyptic threat matrix facing the church. We are not talking about local banditry here. We're talking about existential collapse.
She starts with the internal threats. The deep doctrinal schism between the Eastern and Western churches, which undermines spiritual unity. Then, the squabbling European princes who are too busy with petty wars to focus on the greater threats.
So you've got political fragmentation.
Right. But the true threats are monstrous and magical. There is a massive infestation of dark practitioners,
Right.
imps, trolls, witches, sorcerers, other black art users. This isn't a contained problem. This is a global crisis of diabolical powers seeking into the world.
And the ultimate looming shadow is the apocalyptic threat of the elves. Ziska emphasizes that the church expects them to boil out of the east again, bringing unholy fire and their unclean poison.
The stakes here are the literal survival of humanity and Christendom. The threats are so vast and powerful that normal saintly methods simply will not suffice.
And this brings us to the core ideological doctrine of the mission, the absolute pivot point for this entire story: holy expediency.
Let's linger on that because it's chilling. Ziska defines this terrifyingly. When the stakes are of such enormous scale, moral objections become themselves immoral.
You cannot afford to be morally rigid when existence itself is on the line.
It's a complete inversion of typical spiritual morality. Restraint, piety, sticking to the 12 virtues, that is now framed as a sin if it leads to the world's destruction.
So to win the war against true evil, the church has to be prepared to get its hands dirty.
To use the weapons of its enemies and, critically, to employ devils. And this chilling doctrine is housed physically in the chapel of the Holy Expediency.
Everyone assumes there are only 12 chapels for the 12 virtues.
But Ziska explains the existence of this mysterious 13th chapel, which is hidden because, as she says, it is sometimes necessary to draw a curtain over certain regrettable facts.
It's the Department of Necessary Sin.
Exactly.
Mm.
This chapel manages the tasks that must be undertaken and methods used to which the faithful and unimpeachable are not suited.
And this is why Diaz, the former library book organizer, is appointed vicar. He's clean enough on paper, but he's ambitious and flexible enough in his morals to handle the dirtiest work. He's the ultimate man of convenience.
And his first introduction is to his new guides. First, Jacob of Thorn, a scarred Knight Templar.
Who is described in just absolutely brilliant terms. He looks like a man who had spent half a century falling down a mountain, perhaps one made of axes.
That description alone tells you everything about his history, right? He is clearly ancient, deeply wounded, and utterly relentless. He's a man of long experience and oaths, grounded in a duty that has clearly battered him physically and spiritually over decades.
He's the relentless physical backbone of this team.
Then there's Baptiste, the lay minister, a former assistant barber. She is flamboyant, but dangerous. She's covered in daggers. At least 5 are visible, including 2 secreted in one of her boots.
And her motto, "Never stick your neck out," is the perfect counterpoint to Jacob's stoic duty. She's pure self-preserving pragmatism.
She has served previous vicars. She understands the cynical mechanics of the chapel. She notes that the church has to tackle the world as it is with the tools available, and the tools in this case are extremely sharp.
And this is where Diaz receives his baptism by fire, or maybe a bucket of cold water. He asks about his predecessor, Mother Ferrara, a woman he assumes was rigid and zealous, full of faith.
Baptiste gives this wincing euphemism that rigid things tend to shatter under pressure. But Jacob just cuts through the pretense with brutal clarity.
What does he say?
Dead as fuck.
Wow. That one line just immediately establishes the lethality of Diaz's new career path. He went from managing library book accounts to realizing his job has a 100% mortality rate for those who approach it with traditional religious zeal.
So Diaz is then led deep down into these truly ancient tunnels beneath the Celestial Palace. Tunnels built by the infamous witch engineers of Carthage.
It sets the atmosphere immediately. They are descending into the very guts of the institution, a place of seamless, melted-looking gray stone. It suggests this ancient magical infrastructure supporting the veneer of Christian piety.
And this is the holding cell for his new flock of black sheep, the devils themselves. The atmosphere is immediately sinister. They're kept in these iron cages, ready for deployment.
Okay, so let's meet the new coworkers. First up,
Balthazar Sham Ivamdraxi, the magician. He's naked, which severely undercuts his dignity, but he's utterly formidable. He was arrested for bargaining with one demon and, critically, the matter of the dancing corpses.
the dancing corpses.
Yes, he protests that the dancing corpses only performed the first act of an opera and still struggled to sing. He maintains that black art and white art are drawn from the same magical well, emerging in the same bucket, suggesting the church's definitions are arbitrary.
So he's an intellectual snob.
Completely. He finds his current predicament a mortifying embarrassment. This immediately establishes his character: arrogance, high magical aptitude, and zero respect for clerical authority.
Next to him is Sunny the elf. She's the quiet mystery, described as impossible to overlook yet unnervingly silent, easily blending into the background.
And her features are subtly inhuman. Impossibly wide cheeks and two big, unblinking eyes, like a face reflected in a carnival mirror.
And Diaz, of course, reacts with fear. He makes the sign of the circle against this enemy of God. Elves, as Ziska just noted, represent an apocalyptic threat, and now he has to work with one.
Sunny's value, we can infer, is her ancient knowledge and inhuman perspective, but her quiet nature makes her utterly untrustworthy.
Then there's Baron Ricard, the vampire.
Ah, yes. He's ancient, cultured, and refined, masking a core of deadly threat. He's described as a man of wretched decrepitude, but he carries this unnerving charm, almost ensorceling Diaz into leaning too close to the bars.
And why is he kept?
Precisely for his unique function. His willingness to undertake the labors that those upstairs will not contemplate. He's a creature of the night who can do the church's bidding in the dark.
He's also deeply cynical.
Oh, absolutely. He warns Diaz, noting that few people are more keenly aware than Jake of how much blood a healthy young man contains. He adds, if vampires made sound moral judgments after all, why would the world need priests? The cynicism is just palpable.
And finally, we have the cell that holds the most terrifying implication, Rikke. Her cell is empty. There's only dirty straw and horrifying scratches.
She was moved due to unacceptable behavior. And you have to think, given the company a demon-bargaining magician, an apocalyptic elf, and a refined vampire, the depths of her unacceptable behavior are a truly horrifying thought. It suggests the chapel's flock holds forces far more volatile than even Ziska might prefer.
And Hob, the jailer, he summarizes Diaz's immediate future perfectly with his parting warning.
Stay back from the bars, keep on your toes, trust nothing they say.
And he sincerely hopes Diaz fares better than his predecessor, Mother Ferrara.
Who we must remember is dead as fuck.
Exactly. So on one side, we have Alex, the thief, almost disfigured and now a princess in a political assassination lottery. On the other, we have Diaz, the petty monk, now in charge of a monster squad under the chilling doctrine of holy expediency.
Where morality is a hindrance.
The only common thread is that both of their small lives are now completely, utterly finished. Okay, let's jump back to Alex in the Celestial Palace. She's been scrubbed, cleaned, and dressed in this magnificent silver-stitched robe. But changing her clothes on the outside doesn't change her core nature, does it?
Not one bit. She is still the cynical loner, operating under the grim survival philosophy she learned from a character named Gal the Purse. Never give up the lie. Admit the truth, you're fucked.
This internal conflict is crucial. She's convinced this entire princess act is just some complex con, a temporary opportunity. Her plan is simple. Get what could be got, stay on her toes, and be ready to vanish.
She's an onion made only of skins, always playing a part. In fact, her cynical instincts kick in immediately when she pockets a silver comb that was left behind.
Yeah.
Just in case this whole princess thing falls through and she needs quick cash.
Her supposed uncle, Duke Michael, now has the grim task of informing her of the colossal stakes involved in the East. He explains the dynastic struggle.
Right. Alexia is the daughter of Irene, the eldest daughter of Empress Theodosia. The rival, Eudoxia, committed the ultimate sin. She murdered Irene and usurped the serpent throne of Troy before recently dying herself.
And the rumor mill around Eudoxia's death is fascinating. Some say poison, which is, standard political theater. Others say an experiment gone awry, a last act of sorcerous hubris.
Which immediately signals that Eudoxia was not just a political rival, but a practitioner of dangerous forbidden arts.
To understand the weight of the throne, we need to understand Troy itself.
Duke Michael describes it as a city of immense grandeur, a historical and magical marvel. It's dominated by the Pillar, a massive construction raised not by priests, but by the witch engineers of Carthage.
It also has the famous Hanging Gardens, the Pharos, the greatest lighthouse in the known world. And at its apex, St. Natalia's Flame, a perpetual beacon.
This is the prize. Troy is the historical, cultural, and political center of the Eastern world, and whoever sits on the Serpent Throne controls a vast, powerful, and technologically advanced empire. An empire the Western Church desperately needs as an ally against the looming threat of the elves.
Now, to establish Alex's legitimacy to this grand prize, she has to undergo the Oracle's examination.
This is not a legal or political confirmation. It's a terrifying, high-stakes, magical process designed to confirm her divine right to rule.
The scene itself is carefully protected, which underscores the danger of the magic involved. It takes place in a bright, domed room set with protective lines and symbols. 9 monks are praying ceaselessly. Every protective seal has to be triple-checked.
Alex is positioned precisely inside a brass circle, her shoes touching the metal.
And the oracles themselves are nightmare figures. A man and woman, blindfolded, wrists and ankles chained, looking like starved, withered corpses.
When they clutch Alex's hands, the shock is physical. Her skin burns, leaving her fingers pink and tingling from the heat. This is not parlor magic. This is raw, powerful contact with the unknown.
And their first words are immediately frightening. They start screaming about the elves and their blind, mad, hungry gods.
But the cardinal in the room, Cardinal Bach, quickly dismisses it. He just says, "Don't worry, they always say that," which is this darkly humorous detail that confirms that apocalyptic warnings are so common in this world that they become background noise.
But the prophecy turns specific. They speak of the pillar, rivers in the heavens, the aqueduct, and an ordeal. They promise fire at her end.
And then the man whispers the crucial identifying line, "Fire at her beginning."
This confirms the ultimate mark of legitimacy. Alex is proclaimed Princess Alexia Pyrogenetos, a title that literally translates to born in the flame. This refers to her birth in the imperial bedchamber high in the Pharos, directly beneath St. Natalia's flame. She isn't just a political puppet. She is, by magic and prophecy, the true heir.
But the welcome is very short-lived. Cardinal Ziska returns to detail the deadly opposition they face immediately upon leaving the Holy City.
Eudoxia's dynasty is not going to just hand over the throne. She names the 4 deadly rivals. Eudoxia's 4 sons, Marcian, Constans, Sabas, and Arcadius.
These are powerful dukes who control vast lands, soldiers, spies, and most lethally, assassins. They are entrenched, and they will fight to the death.
And here is where we fully analyze the concept that makes this mission truly unique and justifies the use of Diaz's devils, Eudoxia's forbidden sorcery.
She wasn't just a wicked queen, she was a master of a specific horrific heresy, sarcomancy.
Ziska describes Eudoxia's obscene experiments where she attempted to locate the soul itself. Her goal was to enslave a splinter of God.
To do this, she conducted experiments merging human and animal flesh. The theology behind this is terrifying. Man has a soul, beasts do not. So by fusing them together, she hoped to isolate the specific point of contact, the soul itself, so she could locate it, release it, capture it, and harness it.
This is not just black art. This is the ultimate blasphemous attempt to master the divine.
And this detail provides the critical link to the events that follow. This is why the dukes command the hybrid monsters they use. Eudoxia left them a lethal, magically derived army.
Which forces the church, in turn, to use their own team of functional devils. They are fighting corruption with corruption.
The strategy, therefore, has to be one of absolute secrecy and speed. They cannot face the dukes head-on. Alex must approach Troy in secret, relying on the fact that her cousins don't yet know she is alive. The mission is to fall on them like a bolt from the heavens.
But Alex, the Thup whose goal just moments ago was a silver comb, is utterly overwhelmed by the scale of the legal stakes. She can only mutter, "I've got the right," knowing in her heart that right wouldn't fetch anything on the black market.
Her old, cynical life failed her by landing her in debt. Her new life of legitimacy is immediately fraught with political violence and divine magic. She's stuck. Her petty cynicism is now obsolete, but the idea of accepting this destiny is just terrifying.
Her life has been chosen for her, and the choice is terrifyingly final.
So the mission begins immediately, and we get a taste of the dynamic within this new, highly volatile fellowship. Let's unpack Balthazar's immediate attempt to regain his freedom.
Right. He views his new companions, the priest, the knight, the elf, the vampire, as nothing more than the start of a bad joke.
Balthazar, the magician, is convinced his magical prowess is far superior to any papal binding. He tries immediately to break Pope Benedict I's crude mark. He is certain this simple, uneven red line drawn by a child pope's fingertip can be dismissed with a sophisticated counterspell.
And this is where the dark humor of the source material really shines through. The materials Balthazar uses for his circle of power are incredibly base and expedient. It shows the lengths he has to go to while confined.
He snags a blank prayer sheet, uses a strip of his own toenail as a makeshift pen, and his own excrement as ink.
It's a masterful magical effort, if a bit disgusting.
Very. He performs the 3 classic charms of softening, untying, and cleaving, designed to break the constraint. But the immediate result is not freedom.
What happens?
It's a forceful fountain of vomit, which splatters across the wagon roof and down his bare feet.
So the papal binding works. And it works spectacularly well. It proves its presence despite its crudity. It's the constant, visceral consequence of disobedience. Magical failure equals immediate, humiliating and painful physical rejection.
And Baron Ricard, the sophisticated vampire, confirms the danger. He reminds Balthazar that his predecessor, a sorceress named Estella of Artois, thought the same thing.
And she attempted to break the binding.
She did, and she succeeded only in being crushed to death by a giant, confirming that the magic is both crude and absolutely lethal.
So the group, led by Jacob and Baptiste, sets out on this large iron-riveted wagon with a papal guard escort. This is when Sunny, the quiet, unnerving elf, proves her worth as an alarm system.
She appears silently beside Jacob and says only two critical phrases: "We're being followed." And moments later, hold on to something.
And Jacob, the grizzled knight, immediately recognizes the compromise. He doesn't question the elf. He immediately changes course, knowing their original compromise plan to head to Ancona is useless. He diverts them to the only defensible spot nearby, the walled inn called the Rolling Bear.
And the ambush hits instantly. The driver is shot through the throat, forcing Balthazar, who ironically has no practical skills despite his immense power, to take the reins.
The vampire, Ricard, uses his ancient strength to haul on the brake, bringing the runaway wagon crashing violently through the inn's front wall.
And here we see the physical manifestation of Eudoxia's sarcomancy. The attacking force is a menagerie of hybrid monster.
That foxmen with snouts and small, vicious teeth, a massive goat horn giant in spiked armor, a hound man covered in black and white spotted fur with a dog's tail.
And a hair-eared woman on the wall using dangerous desert recurve bows. They are the living proof of the Euxine experiments performed to find the soul.
Inside the ruined common room, the chaos continues. A pyromancer, one of Eudoxia's magically adept mentees, attacks Alex.
And Alex is just scrabbling backwards, utterly defeated, reverting to the fear she felt when Balthazar had the pincers. The pyromancer uses searing lines of fire that kill two guards and set the serving girl ablaze.
This is the moment where Balthazar, compelled by the papal binding to be nice, is forced into action to protect the little weasel he despises.
Right. The pyromancer asks if he has a strong suit. Balthazar, dripping with contempt but forced to obey, replies, "It's corpses."
He uses his necromancy, his strong suit, to animate the dead. He conducts the charred bodies of the guards and the innkeeper like a bizarre string quartet.
The big guard grapples with the sorceress, while the innkeeper, feeling his way like a blind man, hefts a massive beer cask and stove the sorceress's skull in with the rim, quenching her flames with the satisfying hiss of beer and ale.
This is a perfect example of the doctrine of expediency in action. The church cannot use necromancy, but the binding forces their devil to use it for a righteous outcome. A horrific, disgusting murder for the sake of the mission.
Meanwhile, outside, Jacob of Thorn is fighting a succession of last stands. He is run through with 2 arrows, constantly aching from a lifetime of combat, yet he fights relentlessly, upheld only by his deep, battered sense of duty.
He notes that the world is nothing more than a succession of last stands, lost causes, and bitter ends.
He manages to kill the goat giant and the hound man, proving that even injured he is a force of ancient destruction.
But the tide turns with the arrival of Duke Marcian, Eudoxia's youngest son. He's handsome, heavily armored, and supremely arrogant.
And he immediately confirms the betrayal, holding up the papal bull that confirms Alex's true identity. He knows exactly who she is. He calls Jacob's stand fucking embarrassing before running the knight through the chest, seemingly ending the fight.
So Alex is now cornered, fully regressing to her old persona. She begs for her life, insisting she is just a thief who only came to run from debts, not a princess. She even throws the silver comb she stole into the mud, a desperate final attempt to relinquish the lie and go back to being nobody.
But Marcian is unimpressed. He just sneers that he needs a reason not to kill you. Obviously, you have to die.
So the scene has reached its lowest point for the princess. But the Fellowship has one last, terrifying piece of insurance.
Sunny, the elf who had vanished moments before, reappears beside the wagon. She plucks the key from the mud, nimbly unlocks the massive bolt, takes a deep breath, and vanishes again.
And out bursts the Angel of Troy. Or perhaps the ultimate weapon of the Church of Holy Expediency.
Viga, the werewolf. She is a proper Norse blood and lightning werewolf whose work and hobby are both murder. She bursts out screaming with fury and delight, just ecstatic to be out of the horrid wagon and in the thick of a fight.
And she immediately slaughters the remaining hybrid soldiers, tearing through them in this joyous, blood-soaked frenzy.
She describes her hunt for the good meat, the nice bits, the tasty morsels, and ends the threat entirely by crushing Duke Marcian's skull like a nut. The carnage is absolute, overwhelming the battlefield in seconds.
And the aftermath is grotesque and darkly humorous. Viga, calms down, transforming back into a towering, naked woman covered in crude warning tattoos.
Including the ironic tags danger and caution scrawled across her body. Her only complaint after committing mass murder is that she's thirsty and has blood up my nose.
Baron Ricard the vampire, who looks 20 years younger after witnessing the bloodbath, notes the necessary nature of the chaos. A mess is what you need.
This crew is built for the horrific mess that the church cannot acknowledge.
Duke Michael, gravely wounded with his legs shattered, confirms the scale of the betrayal. It came from the Celestial Palace itself. The mission, he insists, must continue in secret, sending the 2 surviving guards back to the Holy City with him.
So the Fellowship is now entirely composed of those compromised by their sins or their natures.
And Alex, facing the fact that she is the immediate reason for this massacre, accepts her role. Her old life of running and lying led her here. Now she is responsible for leading this motley crew.
The new quest party is confirmed. Balthazar the Magician, Ricard the Vampire, Sonny the Elf, Vigga the Werewolf, Jacob the Scarred, Immortal Knight, gravely injured but still breathing, Baptiste the former assistant barber, and Diaz, the unwilling monk.
The thief is gone. The princess, the reluctant one, is in charge. Alex commits to the only available path, cutting her choice down to the terrifying simplicity of 2 options: Empress or death.
And she regrets it instantly, of course, just like any good cynic. But now she is stuck with it, 1,000 miles from the only place she was ever safe.
So what does this all mean?
Well, this opening dive doesn't just introduce characters. It immediately redefines the morality of this world. The mission, a 1,000-mile journey to Troy with this hand-picked group of devils, is necessitated by the existential enemies they face. Enemies who use the absolute horror of forbidden sorcery.
It's a complete and instantaneous character transformation across the board. I mean, Diaz went from shuffling papers and managing accounts to being in charge of a highly volatile monster squad.
And Alex went from dodging iron pincers in an alley to dodging pyromancy and leading a werewolf. The common denominator is just extreme inconvenience and constant looming death.
The core insight here, I think, is the operational philosophy of the Chapel of the Holy Expediency, the necessary sin.
Absolutely. The church recognizes that to fight an enemy who has crossed every ethical line, one that merges man and beast through sarcomancy, they must rely on individuals who themselves blur the lines of morality and nature. Vigga, the blood and lightning werewolf, is the perfect, necessary weapon against Eudoxia's foxmen and goat giants.
The line between good and evil in this world is therefore purely defined by expediency. And the protagonist's true loyalty isn't born of faith or devotion, but from immediate, painful circumstance.
The magical papal binding. They're bound to be nice and bound to succeed or suffer humiliating failure and violent retribution.
Yeah.
Their motivation isn't faith, it's a forced survival mechanism.
And this is the central tragedy of Alex. Her life as a selfish, cynical loner was a failure. Her focus on self-preservation and theft led her only to massive debt, public humiliation, and near-certain death in that alleyway.
It wasn't her skill as the thief, but the dramatic, violent intervention of politics and prophecy that saved her.
So now she is forced to play the role of the hero, the Empress, just to survive. She is traveling 1,000 miles toward a throne she never wanted, opposed by cousins who use the most forbidden sorcery imaginable. The new mission is not a choice. It's a necessary, violent path toward survival imposed by others.
Which raises an important question for you, the learner, as we conclude this deep dive. Alex's old, cynical survival instincts were a failure. They resulted in death and debt. She is now forced to be a figurehead of power and legitimacy. Given that her enemies are powerful, magically endowed, and politically entrenched, what ultimate sacrifice of her own cynical, unprincess-like soul will Alex have to make to secure the serpent throne of Troy?
She committed to Empress or death, but what version of Empress will be left when she finally arrives? A question that can only be answered through 1,000 miles of blood, guts, and forced cooperation with devils. That was the deep dive. We'll see you soon.